While teaching reading, we are also teaching students how to gear. How to gear their brain to manage their cognition. It's not enough to have cognition. It's not enough. You need to teach them. How can you teach them if you're not trained and you refuse training? You've got to teach them as well how to gear their brain to manage this cognition. Otherwise, they can't do anything with it. And in their brain is going to allow confusion and chaos. So when it comes out in the exam, it's chaotic, erratic, and it goes in all sorts of directions. In order to show how brains are geared, we need to enter a zone located between cognitive science. Cognitive science, it's a scientific study of mind and intelligence, but it's also an interdisciplinary study. So we need to enter and we need to go into a zone located between cognitive science and neuroscience and brain-based learning like neurobics, neurophysiology and so on. I will talk to you about neuroscience in just a moment, be patient. Let me give you first a brief overview of cognitive science and also reference bibliography that goes along with it so you know and you can read that. Experts, like when you say experts, you always have to name. Experts like Sobel and Lee, 2013. Bermudez, 2014. Spanish has an accent on you, so the vowel and the syllable is accentuated. So Bermudez, 2014. Gazzaniga, Ivry and Mangoon, 2013. These are the experts, and we'll talk about their books in a minute. They believe that cognitive theory, with its strong focus on the connection between language and thinking, places importance on the reader's ability to make appropriate choices. We will talk about these choices when we study meta-memory and metacognition. On the appropriate choices between contextual cues, the cues contained in the context. And how do you draw this from the context? You need something we're going to talk about in just a second. The reader's ability to decode, code and decode, comprehend, decode what? Decode the text, comprehend and read. I spoke to you about Sobel, Caroline and Lepon in 2013. They published The Cognitive Sciences, column An Interdisciplinary Approach, published by Sargent. This book traces all the different steps that cognitive sciences have been through. It started as a cognitive science and it became cognitive sciences, and those different interdisciplinary approaches that were linked to it, associated to it, and merged into its approach. The different approaches, the book also describes the different approaches that each section inside cognitive science is dealing with and approaches. The section that approaches the biology, the section that approaches the physiology, the section, a great reference book. Bermudez, Jose Luis, 2014, wrote Cognitive Science, column, An Introduction to the Science of the Mind, published by Cambridge University Press. This is a very important also book and reference book, 552 pages. A very important book because it actually not only gives us insight to cognitive science, but it also gives us on how the different aspects of the mind, the multi-facets of the mind, how they are to be analyzed, and which particular theory and which particular approach is suited best to explain how the memory connects to this, how cognition is this, and how it proceeds from this section to this section. A marvelous reference books. Spoke to you about Gazzaniga Michel, Richard Ivry, and Mangoon George. In 2013, they wrote a book this thick in importance, in interesting presentation, a marvelous methodology for describing the different methodology of the book. The book is called Cognitive Neuroscience. So we're here at the same time in cognitive science, but we also have another dimension inside, added to cognitive science, that's neuroscience. This is not all column, the biology of the mind. So we moved away from describing the brain, and we are inside the mind. When we talk about the mind, when we talk about the brain, we talk about the different parts that are associated with different functions and how the functions combine together, as we will see in memory, to create spaces and interchemical neurotransmitters to build cognition. When we talk about the mind, we are also talking about intelligence. We are talking about how this intelligence is processed, how it is used, and how it is misused, and how it is not used, and so on. Watch this. In this book, part 1, so the book is divided into parts. Each part has several chapters. This is part 1 of this book, Gazaniga Michel, Ivry Richard, Mangoon George, 2013, Cognitive Neuroscience, Taunton, column, The Biology of the Mind, published by W. Norton and Company. Not www.com, W. Norton and Company. This is a 752 pages. So this book is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 is entitled Background and Method of Cognitive Neuroscience. The section of neuroscience that deals with cognition. Neuroscience deals with other aspects, but it deals with this section, cognitive. Chapter 4, inside part 1, is entitled Methods of Cognitive Neuroscience, page 110, 163. It describes not one method, the different methods that are employed in cognitive neuroscience in order to arrive and in order to understand how each and different part of our mind is neurologically, neurophysiologically, neurobiologically, how it is organized in such a way that it creates for us this mind which controls all this huge cognition. Hey, it's not finished. Part 3, I told you the book is divided into parts. Part 3 is entitled Control Processes. Chapter 12 is called Attention and Consciousness, page 491, 554, 554. This is a very important chapter, and you know very well how I'm interested in attention, because attention is linked to every aspect of learning, every aspect of understanding, every aspect of improving, every aspect of growing up has links with attention. I've explained this to you when I was doing higher order thinking skills. Excuse me? You have revised 2 times the 3 lessons of higher order thinking? That's a great move. Fantastic. So, chapter 12 is called Attention and Consciousness. So, attention is linked to consciousness. And in this chapter, it's so important for us to understand how consciousness regulates attention. Whether we are paying attention, if something in our consciousness is disturbing us or creating any form of distraction in our consciousness or unconsciousness, our attention decreases. And as a result, the amount of information coming to us and recorded by our memory is also diminished. A great section. Thus, cognitive experts and psychologists, cognitive psychologists like Friedenberg and Silverman or Reisberg, have theorized Silverman 2011 and Reisberg 2015 have theorized that a balanced approach to the teaching of reading is one that combines a text-based approach. We have seen this one when we studied before, the mental model theory. I explained to you this text-based approach. So also in the cognitive science and in the cognitive section of it, they had to take into consideration as well the text-based approach. So these experts believe that cognitive science creates a balance between the balance to the teaching of reading, of course. That combines a text-based approach and a discourse meaning approach. So it's not enough just to concentrate on the text-based. That's to say the mechanics and how they function each other, how they build and how the sounds correspond to this and that, and then they go up into words. You need also to have another approach. That approach is the discourse meaning, in such a way that the process are reciprocal and they interact with each other to complete each other. Friedenberg, I spoke to you about Friedenberg, Gordon, and Silverman in 2011 wrote Cognitive Science, column, an introduction to the study of the mind, published by Sage. This is also a reference book, huge reference book, 544 pages. If you have this book and you can go and read it, read chapter 4, the cognitive approach, column, mind as a word processor. See the comparisons now? We talk about a word processor, an information processor. So the mind is also like an information processor. It processes all that amount of data that enters in through our senses and goes into different parts of the brain to be processed. So the mind, all of it, in order to make an input and output of it, has to become and has to be an information processor. Again, within the same part of chapter 4, they have theories of attention. Again, different theories that treat attention and how attention contributes a lot to the building up of the mind and how the management of the mind is connected to attention and consciousness. And then again, how do we pay attention? How? By which process do we pay attention? How can we learn to pay more attention when we are daydreaming in the classroom? Where were you? Over there? This way. So, chapter 6 is a great chapter as well in this book. Chapter 6 is called the Neuroscience Approach. So, mind and brain. In this chapter, we understand exactly what are the functions of the brain and how do those functions combine together to form our mind. What do we understand by mind? How is our mind a connection of attention, consciousness, and this and that and that? Superb part and book. Daniel Reisberg, 2015, wrote also a huge reference book, 720 pages. The title of the book is published by Norton and W.W. Norton and Company. Reisberg, 2015, Cognition. Dum dum. Column. Nice sounds. Want to take it? So, exploring the science of the mind. So, Daniel Reisberg went with this postulate in this book to make us understand that the mind on its own, like the brain, has a science. that different sciences that studies it. Neurophysiology, neurobiology, brain-based sciences and so on. The mind also needs to have a science. And so in this book he's exploring the different ways and methods and theories that actually are contained in the science of the mind. Of course, we say that the science of the mind is cognitive science. But this is exactly the science of the mind. Why do we need to study the mind? Why can't we just study the different processes that connect together to form our cognition? Yes, we need much more than that. And we need cognitive science to find out that there is a mind and that the mind is much bigger than just studying the brain. Frankish and Ramsay, 2012. Too many books. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Frankish and Ramsay in 2012 agree that readers must consider the intention of the author. This is an important statement. Remember, in higher order thinking skills, I was talking to you about statements and analyzing with your higher order thinking skills the implication of a statement. What are the implications of a statement? This statement has positive implications. That readers must consider the intention of the author. What are your intentions, sir, when you wrote this?
No intention. I was just writing for the sake of writing. And you people are just going nuts about things I've never thought of or dreamt of.
But still, you must consider the intention of the author as well. Whether the author had intentions or not. As well as their own background knowledge and experiences that they bring to the text. So, Frankish and Ramsay put forward this important statement, heavy in meaning, to explain to us that readers have to consider, they must, it's not just a choice, they must consider the intention of the author. You have to go into the mind of the author, and as well as background knowledge and experiences that they bring to the text. What are the experiences and the background knowledge that the reader brings to this text? From this theoretical perspective, still according to Frankish and Ramsay, both the reader and the text play critical roles. I wrote this. Shh, have it. Have fun with it. Both the reader and the text play critical roles in the comprehension process. Not just the reader, the author also play. If I'm writing this, and I leave it like this with so much ambiguity and this confusing style, will I be understood? I would rather change some of these words and structure of this sentence, and maybe I need to add a few more details or another supporting sentence. And that's also the critical role played by the author who wrote the text. And the comprehension process. So both the reader and the author, they play the text. They play critical roles. If I write in a very complex text, in a very complex style, will I be understood?
No, sir.
You will not be understood. So me too, as an author, or you as an author, or you as an author, or him as an author, or her as an author, they have to play a critical role in I must write something, and I want readers to understand me. And not write, as I said before, writing for the sake of writing. No. Both the reader and the text play critical roles in the comprehension process. If I don't understand, maybe my background knowledge and the experiences I brought to the text was not sufficient and was not enough to understand your imbroglio and your confusing style. Poet, Astros. Right. So, this was also the view of Anna Lucia Henneman. Anna Lucia Henneman. So, first of all, let's talk about Keith Frankish and William Ramsay. Too many books. Keith Frankish and William Ramsay, both of them editors. They wrote here in 2011 in this fantastic book. It's called The Cambridge Handbook of Cognitive Science. University Press. I just can't tell you how many extraordinary and fascinating articles you will find in this handbook. This was published by Cambridge University Press. Anna Lucia Henneman in 2012 published Neuropsicopedagogia, Novas Perspectivas para Aprendizaje. This was published by Novo Hamburgo Sonsupek. Anna Lucia Henneman conducted a study, a survey, with 700 participants. Yes, 700 participants, and she had to classify them into different control groups, not just 2 control groups, different control groups, so many variables she had to study and find out. And she conducted this study in order to find out whether the neuropsychopedagogical fact, they influence learning and reading or not. Whether the reader and the text, they play this role, this neuropsychopedagogical role of the more I write in difficult style, the more I appear to be a genius. Yeah, those was the dreams of a long past time. If I don't understand you, it means you failed. So she has studied with different experimental groups and different control groups, 700 participants. She studied these neuropsychopedagogical factors, how they influence directly learning and reading. With these notions in mind, about the cognitive view, let us now talk about the